Hello, my name is Laser Carrot. I make games and stuff, and I am going to tell you about how I made this fast-paced speedrunning platformer where you play as a tungsten cube. So recently, I joined the game jam, the Flying Block Jam 2025, which is a game jam about, you guessed it, the gravitational pull of the Earth, and also blocks. It's supposed to be more about puzzle games like Tetris and stuff, but I wanted to see if I can come up with something a little bit more unconventional than that. There's also an optional vibe that the game can follow, which turned out to be analog memory. It reads something like, bring back your analog past and take a trip to the pre-digital era. Which, as an early gen alpha gamer, the most analog memories that I have is that one time I fell in a pond as a toddler. And, yeah, I'm glad that's optional. Anyway, with the jam started, I started thinking for ideas. After a bit of thinking, I thought it would be kind of funny if instead of a chill puzzle game, I made some kind of ultra-violent action game where you try to crush people with giant heavy cubes. And the thing about me is that I'm absolutely obsessed with Raxi Flippino. And all this thought about giant heavy cubes made me think of...
We have the illustrious tungsten cube. Aren't those things like really heavy? Right you are, my boy!
So I decided to make a game where you play as a tungsten cube that brutally crushes things. And for the genre, I've been wanting to make a sort of speedrunning type game for a while now. This seemed like a good opportunity. So with the idea set in place mostly, I quickly started making a basic player controller. Well, actually in this case, making might be a stretch. Instead of coding everything from scratch, I copied most of the player code from my main game. Recycling is good for the environment, which includes basic 2D platformer movement and this neat slide. But of course, since you're playing as a tungsten cube, I got to make it actually feel like you're a heavy hunk of metal. I first increased the gravity you take by a lot, as well as make you a little less nimble all around. This is already pretty okay, but to add to the feeling, I added some heavy screen shake, as well as a slightly annoying loud funk every time you land. His name's Kevin, by the way, just so you know. A staple of speedrunning games are cool and expressive movement tech, so I modified some of the code and tried doing some of that too. Jumping during a slide lets you slide jump for extra distance. There's also this slam attack that slams you down on the floor. Of course, I didn't pass up this opportunity to add even more screen shake when landing. And the main movement tech with this is jumping right after you land, which gives you a huge bounce. I took a bit of inspiration from Anton Blast with the sliding and all. All this movement stuff is cool, but unfortunately, there's still nothing to crush. So I quickly got to work on making some bad guys to squash. I first wanted to make proper enemies with attacking and moving and all that, but I quickly realized that it didn't really make sense for them to have that. Since this is a speedrunning game, enemies attacking and dodging your attacks just sounded annoying. Besides, it's a lot more fun to crush defenseless dummy idiots anyway, right? Oh, and it's much easier to code as well. For the sprites, I made something simple with a stupid little grin to, maximize satisfaction when crushing them. And with some very basic code, he's in the game. As you can probably tell, I wanted to make it as satisfying as possible to crush bad guys. So I thought I would go all out with the killing effects. This was actually the most time-consuming part, probably because I got just a little bit carried away. Well, anyway, here's the final result. Okay, maybe I went a bit too far on this one. Jokes aside, this is definitely the most complicated effect I've made for a game so far. It uses 6 different particle effects, all combined to one. First of all, the exploding gore effect here uses 3 simple particle effects. The bits of flesh of the bad guy, 2 eyeballs here popping out, and some extra blood for more finesse. They all look pretty much the same aside from the number of particles that spawn. The bloodstains on the ground is where it gets a bit more interesting. It uses a blood effect that freezes after a set amount of time, which I took from this tutorial. And then I took that effect, modified it to be a thinner line, rotated it 90 degrees. Then I just simply take that line, flip it to the other side, and we have blood spilling all over the ground. Wow, that was a bit of a mouthful. There's also a little bit of hit stop, which is freezing the game for a split second to add even more juice. With that, I'd say the core mechanics are pretty much complete. So I made a quick first level for the game. It's all about teaching players the basic controls, as well as how to slide and slide jump. And then I implemented a system where you have to kill every bad guy on the level to beat it. I worked on some UI stuff to show progress in the level. There's a bad guy counter at the bottom of the screen, and of course I had to add a timer on the screen as well. This is supposed to be a speedrunning game after all. And I even made it so I can set a little level name to show at the top. For the level ending screen though, I wanted something a bit fancy to motivate people to get better times. So I added different medals that change based on the time it took you to beat the level. The highest one is platinum, and then gold, silver, and the last one is bronze. The way I implemented them is, first, I play the level normally, and then I take the time I took to beat it, make it a bit longer for the sake of making it a bit more forgiving, and that becomes the minimum requirement for a platinum medal, obviously. And for the other medals, I use the platinum time as a baseline. Gold requires 1.3 times platinum time, silver requires 1.7 times, and bronze is for anything lower than that. I have fun making the medal sprites. Bronze is my favorite. With the level ending system in place, I created the rest of the levels. So let me showcase and explain them in order. Level 2, Slams 101, is exactly what it sounds like. It's for teaching how to use the slam move. This is where I introduced the slam jump. And to really push the slamming focus, I added these blocks that you have to break by slamming. They were really easy to make since they're just the bad guys without the gore. The next is level 3, Mining Straight Down. Here I wanted to experiment with more vertical level design, and it actually turned out pretty fun. This one also has a big focus on slamming. And I believe this is around when I added a new piece of tech. I eventually realized that you can actually combine the slam jump and slide jump, and I thought that sounded awesome. Until I actually did the technique, which looked like this. This was obviously unacceptable, so I did some additional coding to make it cooler. Now, slamming also gives you a boost in sliding, which I call the super slide. And if you jump during the super slide, you get this. This made slamming way more fun, and after a bit of playing with it, I realized how busted of a speedrunning tech this is. To get back to the level design stuff, I added some tutorial text to teach you the super slide, and hit you at the super slide jump. And on to the next level it is. Level 4, Hide and Smash, is actually the level that got the most amount of reworking. You see, the first version of the level was called Watch Where You Slam, and it was all about having floor made out of breakable blocks to make you watch where you slam. I thought this was clever at first, since both of the previous levels were about slamming a lot. But the problem is that this just wasn't fun at all. Especially after I added the super slide jump, slamming had become the core mechanic of the game. And having a level that punished you for using that was just kinda stupid. So I gave it a big rework and made it an open level about finding baddies in different spots. To help with the more open structure, I made these ladders that can be climbed. These were a bit harder to code than the other level mechanics, but with a bit of state machine, it wasn't too bad. Level 5, Spiky Pointed Barb-like Spikes, was much simpler to make. For it, I made some spiky balls that you have to dodge. They're pretty self-explanatory, but since there is no health bar or death mechanic, I just made them stun you for a bit instead. This is what I was doing with the bottomless pits on every level, so it was also pretty easy to make. There's also a split path to kill the two baddies, but I made it so that you can slam from the upper path to the low one, so I guess I kinda made it pointless. Oh well. Level 6, Killing Spree, is the final level, which means I am legally obligated to include every mechanic so far. This one's pretty simple compared to the other ones, so there's not much to talk about. But I did add a part where you break like 8 different blocks in a row, so that's pretty satisfying. And with all that, the levels are done. At this point, the jam was almost closed, so I made some quick final features. After finishing level 6, you can move on to the end screen and see the combined time it took you to beat all the levels. And to round it all out, I added some metal music in the background that I got from Open Game Art, cause like, metal. I thought it made sense, okay? And with that, I whipped up an itch.io page for the game, and it was finally done. The reception for the game was pretty alright. I'm glad people liked my taste of gore in games. If you want to play the game, the link is in the description. And if you decide to play it, I bet you can't beat my time, so don't even go trying. Ha!